Great, so I will get started. So hope everyone can hear me okay. Maybe a thumbs up if you can. But hi everybody, and I am Lucy Murphy, and I'm the Gynae Oncology Lead here at Cancer Trials Ireland for the Gynaecology DSSG. So thank you so much for coming to our webinar today. So as most of you know, it was World Go Day on Saturday last week. So we decided to put together a short webinar on voices from gynecological cancer trials in Cancer Trials Ireland. So today you'll be hearing from me talking about what we do with the Gynae DSSG, and from Bridget Carr, who is our patient advocate, and she is on the consultant committee here at Cancer Trials Ireland. And then lastly from Prof Cadoo, who is a consultant medical oncologist in James's. So if everyone's happy, I will get started. So here is our lovely pictures and a welcome from all of us. So just to kick it off, a little bit about who we are. So as I said, we're the Gynae DSSG. So we're one of the many disease subgroups here in Cancer Trials Ireland. We're made up of 3 chairs, so 2 medical oncologists. So like I said, there was Prof Karen Cadoo, also Dr. Dervla Collins, and Dr. Sharon O'Toole is our translational chair. And then myself, Megan McGrillen, are the 2 CTI staff who run everything in the background. And then we now have 4 wonderful patient advocates. So we've Bridget Carr, Krista Costello, Deirdre O'Raw, and Lynn Bride. So yeah, we have a lovely big team now, and it's certainly working extremely well for us, as we now have trials open in all areas, so cervical, ovarian, endometrial, and vulvar cancer. You can actually see here in the pie chart the spread of the trials that we have open. So we have mostly ovarian, about kind of like a quarter would be about endometrial, and then the other quarter is split between cervical, vulvar, and other gynae cancers. So just a bit about us, we're also a member of NGOT and GCIG. So these are international collab groups that we work with, and this is mostly how we would welcome our trials into Cancer Trials Ireland, by attending different meetings in different countries throughout the year, networking with our colleagues, and discussing trials that we'll possibly bring into our portfolio. So we have 35 patients enrolled onto our current open studies and recently closed studies, and that's excluding basket or radiotherapy studies. And we've seen a huge growth in our portfolio over the last couple of years. And I'll kind of dive into that a bit more as the slides go on, about how we've kind of achieved this in the Gynae DSSG. So I will bring this back to around June 2022. So when myself and Bridget, we first attended our first meeting together, and the portfolio for the Gynae DSSG was quite small. So we had 2 trials open, 1 in cervical, and there was 1 radiotherapy study open as well. And this is probably due to it being post-COVID. A lot of trials had closed, a lot of new trials were opening. But also it was a very small DSSG when we started. I think the meeting would go on for about 30 minutes, and yeah, very, very small. And myself and Bridget kind of realised that there was a couple of things that we thought were missing from the DSSG that we felt could make better. And we thought maybe we do this together with the chairs, and they definitely agreed that there was things missing and what we could do to move forward and progress the DSSG. So we noticed that there were multiple gaps identified. So we had no rare cancers, no vulvar cancers, minimal options in each area, and only 1 radiotherapy option for patients. There were no goals of the DSSG, there was no patient voice, and there were studies open in the same location, so no geographic spread. Like I said, this is probably because it was a small DSSG at the time, it was recovering from COVID, and yeah, we just felt that we could do something together to move things forward. So one of the things that we did was incorporated patient goals into the DSSG. So we just listened to our patient advocates. So Bridget and I sat and we had a call and decided, you know, what ideas could we bring forward to the chairs and stuff that we could do to kind of make the DSSG more personal and integrate that patient voice in. So at the start of every year, myself, Megan, and all of our patient advocates would discuss things that we'd like to do throughout the year. If this would be having more trial information for patients that's easily accessible, engaging the patient input into the DSSG, having more training and awareness, patient-led research, and moving towards a more operational focus. So we set these goals out at the start of the year, and we like to do things throughout the year separate to just the DSSG, where we talk about the open trials and new trials. And we found this has really helped kind of progress things in the DSSG. One of the other things we did was a patient impact slide. So we kind of noticed that we had patient advocates on the DSSG, but there was not really much input that we could get from them. So what we decided was to send any new trials to our patient advocates and had them review to see if there were any impacts that they would find on any potential patients. So this is an example of what we do. We kind of find 3 important points in the synopsis or the protocol, and we'll share these when we're trying to make a decision on whether or not to take a trial into the portfolio. So an example I have is we had a study where potential patients would wear a backpack that had like kind of like TENS machines attached, and they'd have to wear this for 23 hours a day. And this could be up to a year and a half that they would have to wear this backpack for treatment. And we thought this was fantastic. It's a medical device, something we haven't seen before. And I'll never forget at, I think it was ISGO in Galway, when all of our patient voices stood up and said, like, this is just not the best idea. We would never wear this. It sounds great on paper, but something that we just would not want to move forward with. So although us as scientists and clinicians thought this was a great idea, hearing that patient voice and hearing them say that is something they wouldn't do really helps us decide then on whether or not to bring the trial forward. So we're so grateful to have that, and it's something that we do in every single DSSG now. So this is now our current portfolio. So really listen to that patient voice, and it's really grown what we have now. So as you can see from that first slide that I showed in blue, it's nearly doubled in size. So we filled those gaps. So we now have rare tumours in ovarian. We now have platinum resistant studies. We still have some gaps, but we've filled a lot more in translational and basket studies. We now have 4 radiotherapy studies and 4 in vulva, which is absolutely fantastic. So we've really found that listening to that patient voice has helped us really pick the right trials, and it's really motivated us to go and find the right trials for the patients in Ireland. And another goal that we had decided was opening more geographic locations. So this just shows the trials that we have opening or open in Ireland at the moment, and the geographic spread that we have for these trials is absolutely phenomenal. And finally, then, just having a look at our screening and enrolment numbers. We've nearly 150 patients screened across all studies and 8 sites. High amount of screening for a few randomizations. It's a challenge that we've observed at the beginning, but it does highlight that there's so much work going in behind the scenes. So although we might have 1 patient accrued for, we might have actually screened over 10 patients, and only 1 was eligible for the study. So there is a huge amount of work going into the Gynae DSSG, and our clinicians are like fantastic at doing referrals and sending patients to other hospitals so that the patients are getting the opportunities to be involved in these clinical trials. So just then highlighting some of our achievements. So we filled multiple gaps, but we still need to do more work. Our annual goals decide with the patient advocates have really helped us focus our DSSG and where we would like things to go. We have our patient impact discussion about every new trial. Our studies are opening across the country. We have presented posters for the work that we've achieved by the Gynae DSSG. So we actually had a poster at GCS last year highlighting our patient impact slide and the voice then being integrated into Cancer Trials Ireland. And we are collaborating with ISGO to share trial information more accessible to patients. So yes, we do share our trials on our website, but having it on ISGO is somewhere that the Gynae patients would more likely to be finding the open trials that they might be able to be eligible for. So just to finalise, we are stronger together. I really think that it's worked so well for us having the patient voice and then say myself and Megan in the middle and then feeding that into our clinicians. I think it's worked really well for us, and I don't know how to even explain the feeling that we have as a DSSG. It's something really special, and I think it's really helped the success of the Gynae DSSG. So that's all from me. I'm trying to keep to my 10 minutes. So I'm going to just share for Bridget then, who's going to talk about her voice in the Gynae DSSG. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bridget Carr. I'm a patient advocate. I live in Limerick and I'm married to JJ, and together we have 2 children. A little bit about my cancer journey. So back in January 2019, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Despite experiencing many of the symptoms associated with ovarian cancer, my diagnosis was not made until I went in for a routine operation to remove what was thought to be a harmless cyst from my ovary. I went on to have 4 rounds of chemotherapy, then more surgery with HIPEC, followed by 2 additional rounds of chemotherapy. Thankfully, I'm doing well now, and my most recent scan shows no evidence of disease. So, my personal experience of being on a cancer trial. During my treatment, I learned about the BRCA gene and how knowing your BRCA status can directly impact treatment options and overall care plan. At that time, there was a long waiting list for the BRCA testing, despite it being a relatively simple blood test. While on the waiting list, I was offered the opportunity to join a new clinical trial, the T-BRCA trial. Unlike the standard test, this trial analysed not only my blood for BRCA mutation, but also my tumour tissue. Even more importantly, the results were returned in just 6 weeks, far quicker than the months-long wait for the standard test. This experience highlights something important. Not all trials involve drugs. Some, like the T-BRCA trial, provide vital diagnostic insight that can lead to faster and more effective treatment. So how did this trial impact others? Well, its success means that now all ovarian cancer patients in Ireland are offered BRCA testing as part of their standard care plan. That's real change, and it started with a trial. So why are trials important to patients? Take ovarian cancer as an example. I've seen so many patients and friends become platinum resistant, where their cancer stops responding to platinum-based chemotherapy, or their cancer returns within 6 months of frontline treatment. For those patients, we need access to new drugs and trials. Unfortunately, access to new treatment drugs in Ireland is becoming more and more difficult. Clinical trials can sometimes offer these patients a chance to receive drugs that aren't yet available here, potentially giving them a better chance of survival. So when and why did I join the Gynae DSSG team? I joined Cancer Trials Ireland and the Patient Consultant Committee in 2022 and became the first patient to sit on the Gynae DSSG. Thankfully, since then, 3 other patients, Krista, Deirdre and Lynn, have joined the team. So why did I join? After my treatment, I wanted to give something back. I wanted future patients to have better treatment options. I first got involved in advocacy in 2020 through a research project in UCD, and that positive experience encouraged me to broaden my advocacy involvement. So my own personal experience on the Gynae team. If I am honest, I joined the Gynae DSSG not fully knowing what to expect. I'm not a scientist, doctor or researcher. My only expertise was having lived through a cancer diagnosis and all that comes with it. But researching treatment options had sparked my interest in trials and research. I remember my first meeting so clearly. I had absolutely no idea what was going on. The acronyms, the terminology, it all went over my head. I even made a list of words to Google after. I left that meeting thinking, maybe this isn't for me. I am out of my depth. But what makes the Gynae DSSG so special? After that first meeting, I felt overwhelmed, but then I had a follow-up chat with Lucy and Bernia. I shared my concerns and they listened. They were determined to make me feel part of the team and, more importantly, to ensure the patient voice was truly heard. That conversation changed everything. I knew from then on that my involvement was valued and that made it worth staying and learning. Over time and with teamwork, the role of the patients on the Gynae DSSG has grown. Lucy in particular has worked so hard to ensure our voice are part of the conversation. The introduction of the patient slide has been a game changer. Before every meeting, we now have a pre-meeting where we discuss upcoming trials and how they might impact patients. Our thoughts are then summarised on a slide presented at the main DSSG meeting, ensuring everyone hears the patient perspective clearly. So why is the patient voice so important? It's simple. Without patient participation, there are no trials. If trials come to Ireland and we cannot recruit patients, it reflects poorly on us and may impact our ability to bring future trials here. Lucy spoke earlier of the trial where we would have had to wear a backpack. When this trial was presented, the look on our faces said it all. We were horrified. We knew it was impractical for everyday life. The consultant saw our reaction and immediately recognised that while promising on paper, the trial just wasn't realistic for patients. It was decided not to proceed with that trial. This is exactly why the patient voice matters. We bring a different and essential perspective. So how has the Gynae DSSG impacted me? Being part of the Gynae DSSG has impacted me in so many ways. I get to see the hope and excitement new trials bring, especially for patients who have run out of options. I've learned so much about drugs and research, which has helped me greatly in my advocacy work. I've also seen firsthand how difficult it can be to open trials in Ireland. That's why I'm determined to work with the team to highlight these barriers and fight to remove them. This work fuels my passion to advocate for those who do not have a voice. Krista once said, working as part of the Gynae team gives me hope. It's inspiring to see new trials coming out, trials that could have helped my mother. And that's what it's all about, hope. Hope for new treatments, hope for better outcomes, hope for a future where successful trial drugs become widely available to all patients, thus saving lives. Thank you, and thank you to Cancer Trials Ireland for having me here today to celebrate World Go Day.
Thank you so much, Bridget. I think your words will definitely resonate with a lot of people on the call. So thank you so much. Your participation means everything to us. Thank you. Karen, I'll get you to take over.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bridget, and thank you, Lucy, and for having me to speak. So I hope you can see my slides, can you? Yeah, great. So these are my disclosures. So for people who don't know me, and I can't see the faces here, so I'm not sure who's on the meeting, I just wanted to introduce myself. So as Lucy said, I'm a medical oncologist in St. James's Hospital. And as she also mentioned, I'm co-lead of the Gynae Disease Specific Subgroup with Dr. Dervla Collins. And we then represent in these collaborative groups that Lucy mentioned, the Gynaecological Intergroup, and I'm on the board of directors representing Cancer Trials Ireland and our interests. And then I also represented the European Network of Gynae Oncology Trials, or ENGOT. And these collaborative groups do give us the opportunity, as Lucy mentioned, to network and to meet with people and to see what the opportunities are. And so I just want to give you a brief kind of discussion of some of the challenges that we have and illustrate, you know, the work that it takes. And I'm just going to start by giving you some of the facts. This is very briefly for context about breast cancer. So as you can see, breast cancer, there's about 3,000 cases in Ireland per year. And that's obviously a lot of women are impacted by that disease, and very challenging for those women. But if you look at breast cancer here, thankfully, the death rate is substantially lower than the incidence rate. So there's 700 deaths, 750 deaths a year. And as you can see, their 5-year survival is pretty good at about 88%. And that's primarily because women with breast cancer, for most people, are diagnosed with early stage disease. If we look at ovarian cancer in comparison, it's much less common and people are much less aware of ovarian cancer. So, you know, it's a challenge when people have a disease where your friends and family have less information or less frame of reference for it. And so there's about 400 cases in Ireland a year. And as you can see, unfortunately, there's close to 300 deaths. So the death rate is relatively similar to the incident rate. And as you can see here, the 5-year survival is quite low in comparison to what we saw for breast cancer. It's about 40%, although it is improving. And this data is a little bit out of date. This is the most recent data from our statistics office, but it is looking backwards. But as always, the challenge with ovarian cancer is that many women are diagnosed with stage 3 or 4 disease. And as you can see, the portion of the pie, the women who are diagnosed with early stage ovarian cancer, is much smaller than what we saw for breast cancer. And so this is just to give you a context of the challenge. We're starting with a disease that's much less common, and then we break it down into what it really is, which is a mix of entities. So we really understand now more about the different subtypes of ovarian cancer, and that they're not all the same thing. And I don't expect people to remember the detail of this slide, but just to illustrate the different subtypes, high-grade serous being the most common. It makes out about 80% of people diagnosed with stage 3 or 4 disease will have high-grade serous, and then we go down to the least common, low-grade serous. So low-grade serous ovarian cancer is a very rare subtype of ovarian cancer, and ovarian cancer is not a common disease. And so I was just sort of estimating that there's probably about 12 women in this country every year diagnosed with low-grade serous ovarian cancer. So, for those individual women and their families, of course, this is very challenging. And the challenge with a rare disease is there's just a lot less information, and it's dealing with a rare disease has a lot of challenges when there's a lot of information lacking in that space, unfortunately. So this gets us to a clinical trial that I just want to talk about, 2 clinical trials that we've opened just to kind of illustrate some of these challenges that we have with gynae cancers and with rare diseases, and also some of the successes that we've had. So I came back from Ireland, and I'd been involved with Energy Oncology, which is a cooperative group in the United States, sort of a similar idea to the ENGOT, which is the European cooperative group that we mentioned. And they had started a clinical trial of paclitaxel, carboplatin, and maintenance letrozole, which is an aromatase inhibitor, versus letrozole alone for patients with low-grade serous ovarian cancer. And as we have just talked about, ovarian cancer is not one entity, but up until recently, women who are diagnosed with ovarian cancer were all treated essentially the same. And, as we've moved forward and understood the differences between these diseases, we've kind of come to a realization or an appreciation that perhaps the approach of one size fits all is not the correct way to go. And so, for women with low-grade serous ovarian cancer, they're often diagnosed at a younger age and have a relatively long disease course. Women live with this disease for a long time, but that can be extremely challenging, the living with disease. And the response rates to chemotherapy, conventional chemotherapy, are lower than we see with high-grade serous, for example. So the carboplatin, paclitaxel that you would standardly have in a high-grade serous or other ovarian cancers. So the question, there's some data that I haven't included here about why letrozole, an aromatase inhibitor, or hormonal targeting might matter in this disease. But the question was, what's the value of chemotherapy? Does it add over hormonal therapy alone, or is hormonal therapy alone the way to go? And so this was a very important question, but carboplatin, paclitaxel, and letrozole are not new drugs. They're all old drugs. And so there's no company that's running this trial. This is what we call an academic trial being run by a cooperative group to answer an important question, but with very limited funding. So the study opened internationally in 2019, and it was due to close in 2026. We started talking about it at the Gynae DSSG in 2021, which was before I was actually part of the leadership structure of the DSSG. And Dr. Dervla O'Donnell, at the time, I had proposed it to her, and she got it pitched onto the next DSSG like a week later. It was fantastic. However, we had a lot of challenges. This was, I suppose, a new space. We were opening an academic study that didn't have money associated with it. It was being opened, and we were the only site opening it in Europe. And there was a lot of work that went into getting it open. And as you can see, it took us 3 years to get this study open. And Lucy wasn't there at the beginning, but she was there for much of the time and effort and back and forth and just push. We pushed a lot to get the study open. The study was generously supported by Friends of Cancer Trials Ireland. And without that, we could not have done this. There was just no way to do this without funding. The study was accruing very slowly at the beginning. There was a lot of concern that they weren't going to get an answer. If studies don't accrue quickly enough, they have to be closed for futility because it becomes pointless if it's taking too long to get to an answer. And so they opened up many sites. As you can see, ultimately they opened 900 sites to try and get the patients onto the study. And I think that illustrates the challenge too. For 450 patients, they opened 900 clinical trial sites. They were really worried about their accrual, but actually ultimately this trial closed sooner than we anticipated, which was a little bit of a shame from our point of view. We didn't have it open for the other year that we might have hoped for, but nonetheless, we got it open. We opened it in Dublin and then we opened it in Cork, and we had patients went on this trial. So a lot of work, and sometimes it felt like it was never going to happen, but we got there. And then the thing that I think is really important about that is I think it opened doors for us. So the next study I just want to mention is the RAMP study. So this is for recurrent low-grade serous ovarian cancer. So this is looking at new targeted therapies, avutometinib and defactinib versus investigator's choice. And so this is a very interesting, scientifically very interesting study, a lot of promise with this. And one of the things about this study that's very appealing as well, when you think about it from a patient perspective, is that patients who are randomized to the chemotherapy arm have the opportunity to cross over if their disease were to grow. So everybody gets the opportunity to get the experimental agents which are promising in this disease. So the study opened internationally in March 2024 and was due to close in January 2026. ENGOT approached Cancer Trials Ireland in about October of 2024, so it had already opened. And we got it onto the next Gynae DSSG, which was quite soon. But as you can see here, in comparison to our previous experience, having learned from that and made progress and things had changed in the interim, we managed to get this study open relatively quickly. And you can see here that there's much less sites and less participants in this study. So, enrolling very quickly, actually. And we opened this in just one site to get the opportunity to get it open as quickly as possible and to give patients the opportunity to get onto the study. And I think this study then opens up the potential for other opportunities. And so I wanted to include these two studies just to give some perspective. Ovarian cancer is a rare disease. And then when you boil down into the subgroups of ovarian cancer, you really are talking about relatively small groups of patients. But for those groups of patients, it's so important to have good data. And so I think it's very important that we participate and that we engage. It took a lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of support from Friends of Cancer Trials Ireland, from Cancer Trials Ireland to get that study open. But I think that then opened another door for us. And we have worked hard nationally and locally in St. James's to streamline our process. And you can see the result of that second trial that I showed you, how much quicker. Now, it's a different kind of study, but we got it open much quicker. We've done a lot of work to try and streamline. It is important to have geographical spread, but it's also important to concentrate our efforts in rare diseases. So opening a study in one or two sites, I know it's tough for patients to travel, but if you have a disease where you have very few patients who are potentially going to be eligible, opening in multiple sites causes a lot of logistic and financial input. So you have to concentrate your efforts for rare disease, but you also have to share them around. So we've opened, for example, low-grade serous ovarian cancer studies here in St. James's. In the Mater Hospital, they're opening some phase 1 studies, and I'll send patients there to avail of opportunities there. So it's all about being collaborative and sharing around. We have a small population in Ireland, and so from that perspective, we can't put 50 patients on a trial in ovarian cancer. It's never going to happen, especially when you boil down into the subgroups and the specific eligibility of a given trial. But we have to advocate, engage, network, and always put our hand up and try and do our best for our patients. And I really think that we've made a lot of progress in the time that I've also been on this DSSG in moving things forward. And I just included as a final slide, this was the GCIG meeting in Chicago. It's like, where's Wally? I'm there at the back. And Lucy, I don't think you're in this photo, I'm sorry. But this is why traveling, it sounds great, but actually it's a lot of work when you're trying to do this and your day job at the same time, but it's really worth it because this is how we do get opportunities. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Karen. I feel like we could have a panel discussion about everything shared between myself, Bridget, and yourself. I have so many thoughts and so many, lovely things I would love to say. But I think, in the interest of time, I don't know if we have time for questions, but please do send myself, Karen, and Bridget any questions you might have. You can even just send them to the Cancer Trials Ireland general email address, and I'm sure one of us can answer. But I just hope today was, really interesting for people to kind of see what we do here. And I think, like everyone really highlighted the collaboration that we have, not only within the DSSG, but with our global colleagues as well. We're really trying for the small number of Irish patients that we have in the Gynae DSSG, but no matter how small, I think it's really important that we do our best to get trials for them. So thank you so much. If there's anything else anyone wants to say, but I think that's it.
Thank you.